coming. I'm pumped, especially after hanging last night. For people who might not know who you are, can you give a quick little intro?
Yeah, my name's Anthony Pierri. I'm a co-founder at Fletch. It's a two-person product marketing consultancy. We primarily work with early stage B2B SaaS venture-backed startups. And we really help them try to figure out the best way to position their product, figure out the best way to message it, like creating the value propositions, and then taking all that and helping them rewrite their homepage. So a lot of it comes down to what are we going to put on the homepage, and a lot of times if they're more technical founders, they really struggle with just explaining it in a simple way. And so that's basically all we do, and we work with a ton of companies. It's more of like a volume-based business, so we come in, help them solve that one problem, and then they go on their way. So we've gotten a chance to work with close to 160 different startups. So it's been a wild ride, and we've seen a lot of different patterns emerge from all these companies. They all kind of struggle in the same ways, even if they're in different industries. If they're SaaS and they're B2B, they're all going to kind of make the same mistakes. And so it helps us to give some hopefully sound business advice, how to make it clearer and better.
So I'm going to do something a little bit different than all the interviews that we've recorded so far. And it's because of something that you told me last night. I'm going to get you real fired up. So you said Chicago food was mid.
I don't like that this is going on the record. This is something maybe I told you in confidence, but I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm
from a Chicago guy.
Yeah, seriously. I've lived in Chicago. I lived downtown for a bunch of years. Now I live in the suburbs. Maybe I'm just used to it, and it doesn't have the luster. The Italian beefs, they're fine. The deep dish, it's fine. I don't know. But when I go to other cities, I'm often blown away at it feels like the food is way better. But maybe it's just because I'm desensitized to all this stuff. You grow up eating Portillo's, your whole life, and it's not as much of an experience when people come for it. So.
I feel like since I embarrassed you, I'm going to embarrass myself.
Great.
I feel like the Portillo's, I grew up in Park Ridge near where I grew up, probably knew my mom's face and our faces in the drive-thru because of how often we went growing up. So
yeah, for sure.
Kind of needed a Portillo's detox for a while.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to talk food, especially since I haven't had lunch. But one of the other things that you shared with me last night, I thought was super interesting because I look at you as somebody who's taught me a whole lot about product marketing and really positioning and messaging. How you got into product marketing is kind of a crazy little story.
Yeah, it's definitely a winding journey, as a lot of people, most people don't grow up saying I want to go into product marketing. So
find me one of those people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the guy who's like, in 8th grade, who's like, I can't wait to be a product marketer for a B2B SaaS company. Like, nobody even knows what that is, right? So I had a long journey. I'll try to tell the fast version. But when I finished high school, I wanted to be a high school English teacher. And so I was doing this double major where I was basically half in the school that I went to, you had to major in teaching, and then in the area of education that you wanted to do. So it was English. I was nearing the end of it, and I actually was about to get married, and then I had been doing some side jobs at this church that we had grown up going to. And they actually said, if you can just finish the English degree, then we'll hire you on full time. And so I'm like, well, I could wait out this teaching thing. It's a couple more years to finish the other degree, but I'm just gonna take this job. So I said, okay, fine. I dropped out of the teaching program. I finished the English degree, and then the church hired someone else. So I was like, no, I lost my opportunity, and then I lost my spot in the, if I was going to go the teaching route, it's too far out of the program, that didn't make sense. So I ended up getting a different job at a big, you could even call it a mega church back, downtown Chicago. That's when me and my wife, we moved into like River North area, if you're familiar. And so I worked with them for a while, did all sorts of different things there, communications, production, like video, content creation, and actually eventually worked my way all the way up just through the chain of, getting promoted, and eventually became a pastor. So it was like associate pastor was the title. I was in charge of this Sunday night service and had, a big team of like volunteers, probably like maybe 100 people who were like, I was overseeing, that did the tech and the setup and this music and all the different areas and stuff like that. So did that for a while, and then moved out of the city, wanted to be closer to my wife's family. My family were all out in the suburbs. So we moved back out there. And I took another job at a different church, then COVID happened. And so everything I thought I was going to do for them kind of fell through the cracks. And I was like, I just need to take a break. I'd been working in this other industry for, close to maybe 12 years at this point. And I'm like, I just want to do something new. So an old boss at the first church, he told me about this position at an agency that worked with B2B companies primarily. And they did product design, product development, product management, kind of like selling product teams for hire that you could bring in. So I get pulled in as an SDR, so entry-level sales role. But the funny thing was, because I came from this other industry, I had been, 12 years of promotions and pay raises. But the entry-level SDR at this company was actually a pay increase. So I was excited, even though I was taking a job that they traditionally give to 18-year-olds right out of high school with no college degree or anything. And I'm like, I've got a bachelor's and a master's degree at this point doing this entry-level sales job. And so we were basically trying to figure out if this was going to work. The company had grown primarily through referrals and stuff like that. And so adding on this outbound sales motion, it was kind of an experiment. We didn't know if it was going to work. And so I spent maybe 8 months, 9 months trying to figure out if it could work. And we basically got to the end of it saying, we don't think this strategy is going to work. Because everyone's needs are custom, it's really hard to do outreach. And because we were working with so many different companies and stuff like that. So I actually pivoted into their product team. I was technically a product owner. And as a product owner, I'm waiting on the bench to get placed on some projects where I can, as they're doing these things, basically very similar to project management. And so I'm waiting on the bench and nothing's really happening. We don't really have any good opportunities for me to get off the bench. And so I'm getting a little worried. I'm like, I got to do something. I'm in this new industry. I haven't really proven out any value or anything. So me and the guy who actually ended up co-founding Fletch with me, the two of us started saying, can we try to get some sort of productized thing that we could sell multiple times? And so we start posting on LinkedIn. And I'm like, I think LinkedIn is the cringiest platform on the planet. I've heard people talk about it. I'm like, I'll just give it a try. And for whatever reason, I luck out. The first post I ever do goes viral. And it's,
this is easy.
And so I'm like, this is insane. I'm getting hundreds of connection requests, hundreds of thousands of views. And it was like a silly post. Like it wasn't even very interesting. And then I'm like, well, maybe this is just a fluke. So then maybe a couple days later, after I worked through the whole connection request list, I post again. Second post goes viral. 2 viral. The first one, and I was like, this is probably unheard of in the history of any new LinkedIn people, right? And then, of course, after that, nothing. For months and months and months, no traction with any posts. But I had like a person at a casino. I had tasted the success. So I was like, there's something here. So me and my partner, Rob, we both start posting. We're like, let's start posting all the time. And we're trying to figure out, and we were using the post to gauge where there was demand in the market. So one week I did a whole roundup of PLG pricing strategies. And I talked about all the different ways that people monetize their PLG product. That one pops off, gets a lot of likes and stuff. And I'm like, we're chatting. I'm like, maybe we should do pricing strategy. That should be the whole company. And so we had this running joke. We're like, product number 75, because it was always changing every week. He was doing like breakdowns of people's business models and using like the value proposition canvas and the business model canvas. And we're like, maybe we just do that. So we keep trying different things. Eventually, we kind of find this weird niche where we're like, let's do positioning for startups. And that, if you think about it, depending on who you ask, that's either highly narrow, wow, what a narrow thing, and it's also incredibly broad at the same time. What is positioning? It depends on who you ask, right? And then what are startups? The 2 people in the garage and the company that's about to IPO with thousands of employees. So we started posting about positioning, and then we were like, all right, well, let's try to reverse engineer how a company's positioned. So what we were like, what's the most public thing they have? It's their homepage. So we go on the homepage, and we're basically trying to break down, like, are they talking about a target persona? What really is their key point of differentiation? What does the product do? What problems? And we realized that like nobody says anything. Every homepage out there is just super vague, super broad, and you can't figure out the company's position.
I die sometimes when you'll post, and I'm not going to name companies, but you'll do screenshots of, they're usually large companies with a ton of funding that can do this. And I look at it, I'm like, what does that even mean?
What is it? Yeah. And I in my talk later, I've got a bunch of really funny examples that I'll share. But so we start posting about this, and we're like, I think it would help you potentially get more customers if you told people what the thing is that you're selling. And that's a revolutionary concept, I guess, in B2B. If you go to any other industry in the world, it's pretty much table stakes that you should tell people what the product is. But we've got all this bad baggage with B2B where people are like, well, they don't buy products, they buy outcomes. So they lead with outcomes, right? Increased revenue. Well, they're buying the outcome. But at the end of the day, we truly think people are buying products. They're like, I need a CRM. I don't need to increase revenue. I'm looking for the CRM. So as we keep doing these like audits, public audits of companies, people start asking us, can you just help us rewrite our homepage? So we're trying to follow the market. We're getting pulled into all these specific spots. And then all of a sudden we find that there's this really repeatable problem where early stage companies, especially seed to Series A, they've raised money, and they're like, we had this old website we threw up in a day. Now we raised $5 million and we got to make it look a little more legit. And all of a sudden, it's really hard for us to figure out how do we conceptualize what we've created. Now we're going after these 10 different markets. We've got all these different features, and it became this complex problem that every early stage founder would struggle with. So we're like, let's go all in. And then probably about last May, so we're coming up on a year, we actually spun off from the other agency, became our own entity, because it was just getting really confusing. People would come to their website and be like, I was looking for the positioning stuff, but I see all this stuff about development and design, and I thought, and then they would get confusing in the other way too. And so we were like, it probably just makes sense for these to be two entities. We left on good terms, which was great. You know, we still do some projects with the parent agency that we were spun out of. But now that's all we do. We just work on early stage companies, homepages primarily. Sometimes we'll do some later stage companies and random things here and there, but that's really the bulk of it. And that's my shortest explanation, which still ended up being probably 2 times as long as it should have been.
So a couple things stand out to me. One, you've only really been in product marketing for a couple years, right?
Pretty short. And to me, what product marketing, the reason why like I feel like I have some pre-built skills that were good for this is because I've had so many years of teaching. So, I wanted to be a teacher early on, but then even when I was in the church job, right, I was basically, every week I'd get up and I'd take a really complex topic that was pulled from all these, you know, ancient languages and stuff and say, how do I distill this into the simplest way possible? And so I would break down these complex things into really simple, clear things. And I'm like, that's literally the job of a product marketer. How do I take all the technical stuff, I'm considering the audience who I'm for, and then put it in an easy way to make it make sense. So like, even though I've only been in product marketing for maybe 3 years-ish, depending on when you count that journey starting, I feel like the skills from the last, 15 years.
And the English major too.
And the English major, right? There's a lot of that. Like I just posted like I call it product marketing sentence diagramming, which is like straight from English major stuff, like diagramming the parts of sentences, but doing it through a product marketing lens. So it feels like it all carries over. But like you'll be surprised too if you focus on something. And that's the only thing you do. You get expertise pretty quick, right? Like a lot of product marketers who come up in companies, they're trying to deal with, executive stakeholder management. They're thinking about sales decks. They're thinking about content, and they're getting a wider exposure to one company. But because we only do positioning messaging for the homepage in early stage, and we've done it now 160 times, it's like I know the patterns and I've seen it so many different times now that you can recognize the issues and you can say, this is why this is not going to work. This is why it will work. And then when people ask us, like, can you help us make a sales deck? I'm like, that's beyond me. You know what I mean? Like I got thoughts about it, but you don't want to trust me for expertise outside the narrow area that we've really focused in on.
So, and I don't think I asked you this last night. Were you guys always dead set on niching down, like getting super laser focused? Because I think that's one of the things that you've taught me from afar is just the importance of niching down when you can.
So it's funny, my partner, Rob, he was for sure the driving force. And I fell into all the same traps of every founder, let's go broader, look at all this opportunity, why not? And he was a big proponent. He loved that book, Built to Sell, which is a really good one I'd recommend for anyone, especially agency world. But Built to Sell was all about picking a specific niche, productizing your surface. And so we came out of this custom agency, which was the polar opposite of what we do. Service anyone who will basically pay us. Like that's our ICP is. Do you have money?
You went from one end of the spectrum to the
to the polar opposite. Maybe we went too far, honestly. I don't know.
I don't think so.
Now that we're productized, I'm like, I could never go back, right? Like because we get to work with so many cool companies, seeing what they're doing, and every single company we work with, it's a chance to make the framework and the process better. So like if you think about our processing framework as like software, we're shipping updates twice a day. We'll work with a company in the morning. Why didn't that work? Well, we got to adjust the definition of this specific part, or we need to switch the order. We'll ship it to the company that we work with in the afternoon. So in general, when you think of like transactional business or volume-based business, there's kind of like a gross connotation, like, oh, you're just going to come in and churn and burn. And we're like, it's actually the key to why we're so good at what we do is because we work with so many, and it's like an LLM, The more data you feed the algorithm, the better it's going to get. So that's kind of been our philosophy, and it's really helped us a lot.
So you ran me through the whole process last night. So we're not going to, I'd love to do another video where we talk through the whole process. But one of the questions that I have is, what role do customers actually play in this process when you're interviewing founders? I've worked for technical founders before. They want to go, super broad, super technical. And at first, we didn't really talk to a whole lot of customers. So are you talking to customers during this process?
So we did, when we were at the custom agency, a lot of times they would hire us to do the primary customer research. So we would be doing hands-on, jobs to be done interviews. We'd run 10, 20 of them per company, really trying to understand it. Then we'd synthesize it all. We'd present it back to the clients, and the founders would usually reject it. They would be like, no, you didn't talk to the right people, or you didn't.
That's what happened to me.
Exactly,
Yes.
right? You didn't synthesize it right, or nah, that doesn't match my experience. So eventually we were like, listen, for this new model, we're going to actually say it's up to you to do the research. And we say to them, the success or failure of our engagement 100% hinges on how well do you know your customers. And so we say, bring the people who are closest to customers. Maybe it's sales, maybe it's marketing, whoever it is on your team, bring those people in, because we're going to use them as kind of the stand-in, the avatar for the customers. And it's a huge variability in how well they can answer the questions. We actually had one company we were just working with this week. They had just hired basically someone from their ICP to be a subject matter expert on their team. And so they're on the call, and every single time I would be like, okay, it sounds like you're saying this is the value proposition. Does that feel right? And then they just turn to the guy and they'd be like, what do you think? And he'd be like, no, that's not right. Because he actually ran the type of company that they were trying to do. So we had real-time feedback with them, which was awesome. Other times we'll ask them.
That can't be the norm.
No, that's very rare. Other times we'll ask them and we'll say, well, what do you think and they'll be like, I don't know. And then we're like, this is kind of a problem, right? Like, you're going to probably want to go talk. And so we leave time between the first session and the second workshop for if they need to go talk to people to validate any of these things. And we've talked about using like Winter, sponsoring this whole conference, using Winter in it, but because we're doing early stage companies, it's usually too expensive. The price point is just too high based on what we're charging. But we've talked about with bigger companies, basically building in these validation segments throughout the process. So when they say, we think these are the key things we want to talk about value proposition wise, we can actually put it in front of the directors of marketing, whoever they're trying to sell it to, and validate it. But everything hinges on the audience selection, right? The customer, how they frame things, what they're looking for when you come to them. So like what you guys do is super cool and probably very aligned in philosophy of what we say.
Yeah, that's why we get along. So I guess when you're rewriting homepages, what role does social proof kind of have in the homepage?
I think social proof can come up in a couple different ways. So like if you're B2B, the traditional way, if you're going after a larger mid-market enterprise, I think if you can get those logos that are recognizable, it's a huge trust booster. But if you're going to SMB, social proof will probably look different because you're not going to put logos of SMB companies that no one's ever heard of. So like we usually say, if you're trying to do that, the number of customers that you have can be helpful. A lot of times those testimonials, you've seen the wall of love, where it's like all these different screenshots of people, SMB companies that are like, this changed our whole business and stuff like that. Social proof in that way is really powerful. Stuff like G2, if you've got the badges that you're the top rated category and whatever.
Everyone has that badge.
Which everyone has the badge, and I think you can actually pay to get it. Basically, you can pay for the reviews. But it's still, I think it still is a bit of currency in our current day. Who knows where it'll be in a couple of years? But yeah, we're usually trying to bake that in. And a big thing too is when we have people talk about these like business outcomes. The companies always want to lead with that. They want to say, we're going to 2x your revenue, 10x your whatever. And it's like nobody believes that. When the company's the one saying it, it's like saying I'm the most humble person around, and you're like, come on. So we usually say, if you can find the quotes and the testimonials and let the customers say, we worked with X company and they 5X'd or whatever, right? Then it's a little bit more believable, especially if you've got name, title, and I could be like, I'm gonna go look that person up on LinkedIn, and I'm gonna message them to see if this is true.
Which is exactly what I do, and I know other people do too. And oftentimes you find that they don't even work at that company anymore, and they're still using the same quote.
For sure, absolutely.
So I'm curious to get your take on this. Customer evidence. When you hear customer evidence, what does that mean to you?
I'm assuming that the customer evidence is essentially these pieces of like collateral of what they've said, what they think, right? And you're the expert, so you tell me. That's my read on it.
It's been interesting to hear. We've done, I think, 5 or 6 of these already, and we've got plenty more. Everyone's had slightly different answers, so it's meant a couple different things, but it really comes down to trust at the end of the day. And the first 2 interviews, both people said trust, and it's like, I want to go trust what people have who have actually used the software. What they say about it, the results that they've seen, just because people don't really believe what vendors have to tell them anymore.
So if you have the evidence to back up from the customers, right? And did you guys coin that term?
You may or may not see a little bit more of that from UserEvidence soon, but we're leaning into it more from a positioning and messaging perspective.
And I mean, obviously that brings the challenge of will people know what this means? And but if you can carve it out, right? Like, and it's so funny because we make fun of category creation all the time.
Oh, I don't want to create a category, but I'm trying to like, how do we not create a category?
Yeah, there's a little bit, right?
Term? Yes.
Well, me and Rob, because we'll go toe to toe with the the category pirates folks who are like, they all have the little black flag emoji in their names. And whenever we post about it, they all pile on and are like, this is, you guys don't get it.
Yeah.
And so we make fun of it a lot. But I mean, depending on how you frame it, like me and Rob today, we sell homepage positioning. And you've got on record, like I could find the post, April Dunford, you could argue is the foremost expert on positioning for B2B. You have her on record saying you cannot reverse engineer positioning from your homepage. The homepage and positioning are not together. So we've spent a year, maybe more than a year, evangelizing that homepage and positioning they actually do belong together. And now like people are like, I'm coming to you for homepage positioning. So at some level, we kind of are these silly category pirates. We kind of created one on accident. So I make fun of it on one side, but then I'm like, but there is some merit to like carving out the language, owning it. So like customer evidence, like maybe 5 years from now, that's the dominant phrase that everyone uses, and you guys will be the.
We hope so, and then we'll
capitalize.
Go back to this video, and then we'll say this is where it was born.
That's where it was born, right there.
Last question for you: how do you go about building trust in your marketing?
We do it so like when we work with people, we only use LinkedIn, and we were very intense about the niche. Not just in who we're going after in the product, but also the whole go-to-market. So we just use one channel, just LinkedIn at this point, thought leadership primarily. And so we build trust, long-term content, giving away as much value as possible. So when people come to us, they already feel like they know exactly what we're gonna do. There's no surprises, the pricing's public. And so that allows us to kind of answer all the objections before anyone ever gets on a call with us. And we even, because we're so niche, we send the same sales pitch to the people getting on sales calls ahead of time. So we say, watch this 10-minute video. This is what we're gonna pitch you. And then when you get on the call, we'll just talk through any questions that you have. So most people get on and they're like, the questions I have is, when do we start?
It has to be the shortest sales cycle.
Oh, it's close rate's super high, which probably means we should raise prices. But yeah, the sales cycle, it's a one call close almost always. And we don't even really do any pitching. We already did it ahead of time, so.
Unbelievable. All right. Well, this was a blast.
Thanks for having me.
You ripped on Chicago food. I'll move past it.
For sure.
Awesome.
Super fun.